Oladosu Adenike, and I'm very excited to be here to speak about the work I do and to inspire change, just as it is amplifying change efforts to the global community. And um, so one of those things we do, talking about how we go global, from local to regional, national, then to the global affair. And one of those things we do is that one, being consistent. I think if you want to make a change, you have to keep doing what you are doing. Just for example, I do advocacy a lot. I started with the lake child issue, talking about how lake child is affecting millions of people, and people are losing their livelihood. And due to this, there's already displacement, refugee, and the rest. And if we don't mind, we are going to lose the lake. We have lost the mega lake Chad, which have shrunk to the current lake that we are seeing today by 90%. And the remaining 10%, we might lose it. And so I started this, and I became consistent in it. Just for example, I started making video every Sunday, Mondays. And if people could know that you are consistent in something or in your advocacy, they will always want to follow the trend. And that was how I was able to get people's attention, looking at those trends that I'm able to make. And also, secondly, you also have to be conversant with what you're advocating for. Research, know the data, know what you're advocating for. Because if you're advocating for something, you just feel like you would just put an image there. Go through social media, amplify yourself first before someone could amplify you. I think when I started this lake child issue, many people began to ask me different questions, especially those from the global west, like, oh, we don't know about this. How do we know more? Come and speak to us here. So I started getting several speaking engagements. But first, when I started, I will tell you I schooled in the Federal University of Agriculture, Makurdi, graduated with a first class in agricultural economics. But that did not limit me, looking at the fact that there are always clashes between the farmers and the herdsmen. And then I found it that there's low climate education, because anything that happened there, it's always a particular ethnic group called Fulani. But then it's not always true, because people are trying to fight for resource control. The farmers and the herdsmen, they need the land, they need water, and these are already shrinking. And so looking at all of those things, trying to build knowledge, trying to acquire knowledge, researching, getting involved, getting data in those areas, sometimes it takes a lot of time. I won't lie to you. It takes a lot of time. But then when you keep being consistent, it makes a big impact, not only to your local community, to the global space at large. And so when I finished my undergraduate studies, I started this the Fridays for Future in Nigeria, started by Greta Thunberg. And one of those things that we do is a weekly action like Fridays. Then I became consistent for more than a year, every Friday. And people get to know me through that, speaking engagement and a whole lot. And my first speaking engagement was that I was invited for the first United Nations Climate Youth Summit in New York in 2019. And that same year, I also got the award of Amnesty International, an award that I became a recipient here in Nigeria for my fight for climate justice and human rights. And I think it all started that way, and it keeps building up. And that same year too, in 2019, I get to know the Honorable Minister of State. That makes it more impactful, because I attended the United Nations Conference of Parties, which is known as COP. And this year is COP27, which I'm also going to be part. So that way, you have to start from your community, start educating people. And looking at the Fridays for Future movement, it's a global movement to say, but we do localize it, which is very important, that you localize whatever you get from the global scene. Because here in Nigeria, we can't match in such number. But what we do is to educate people, because we know that people have to understand. I believe that If you don't understand that a problem exists, you can't solve it. So there's always a problem in the society to deal with. It's just for us to find that aspect that is missing, and then we try to find solution. And so those are the kind of scenarios we are trying to create, to see that we find solution. We tell people about the problem because I know the problem exists. That's why I'm trying to find ways at which we could make this a solution, because climate change is already a threat. It's a threat to our agriculture, to housing, to infrastructure, to our economy, and we are also seeing it with the flood. Probably many people doesn't even know that it's an environmental crisis that is ongoing with the flood. So the flood too is a very big disaster to talk about because it's leading to loss and damage. And loss and damage is now the big thing to talk about too. And so those are how we get to move, from your local arena where you're trying to amplify change, and also, fourthly, you also have to get involved with civil society. Join a group that is active. Join people that are ready to advise you, they are ready to, support you with whatever it needs. It doesn't necessarily have to be fund. When I started with my own money, and now I could get funding from different ways to carry out my activities, maybe as a fellow or different ways. So just have the mindset of starting to create a change in your local community. Identify a group that are very active that could help you to amplify your voice. I think those are the things I did. Because while we visited the Honorable Minister of State, it was through a civil society, and through there she identified me, and she said, okay, I'm going to work with her. And I worked with her for almost a year. And then I became Nigeria Youth Delegate for COP25, COP26 in Spain and in the UK, and now in Egypt. So people have to know what you stand for. People have to know what you are. Just for example, maybe many people might not know my name, Oladosu Adenike, but immediately you call the ecofeminists, they know who they are referring to. Let people know who you stand for and what you stand for. It's very important. That tells about consistency in your advocacy, in trying to solve problems, in trying to get people involved, in trying to educate people about why it is very important. And also talking about the fact that we also need to back every action that we do to see that we gain international support. Like, use your social media handle. It's not only for just posting pictures about yourself. What are you doing to transform your society? What do you have to offer to your society before your society offers you something? You have to search through, because we have several problems to solve in our society today. Look at the ones that best fit what you can fight for, then go for it. Because the climate change crisis is a big thing. It's a very broad area. It's cut across agriculture, housing, economic, and different kind of things, even political instability, all of this. And so looking at the climate change crisis itself is something that defines us. Currently, we have been seeing that more millions of people will be displaced. Look at the ongoing flood in Nigeria. It has displaced several people. It has led to the loss and damage of different things. And now, what is happening now is that people are campaigning or calling for loss and damage. If you don't get to follow the global trend, you won't know what is happening. You'll still be at the edge of, okay, you are still campaigning, but you wouldn't know what is happening. And so those are the ways at which we use to transform our society. Get to know the problem, try to know how to approach it, using different means, and don't walk alone. Don't walk alone. Don't walk in cyclone. Work with other people. Collaborate with other organizations. And I could tell you today, like, I get several speaking engagements, and now I'm a fellow. A fellow at the Gießen University in Germany that I'm going to start by next year for 3 months. So it keeps going. It keeps getting better. You keep making yourself known. So just continue in that trend and be hopeful, and that things is going to get better. And also amplify yourself through your social media. And just for example, I have a website called www.womenandchrist.com, whereby I write several articles and I make it consistent every week, to say that I try to meet up to the standard I've started. And one thing with success is that how to maintain success. That is the work in there. That you always want to maintain success. That is where the problem lies. Some people, they have the success, but they can't maintain it. And now I'm trying to see how I could write my first book through a media publishing firm. Keep trying to see how you could improve yourself every day. I write articles, I make videos, I have YouTube handle, I have different social media handle that I could use to amplify the work I do. And so that is how it keeps getting better. And seeing yourself as a change agent, it also matters a lot. That we are all change agents wherever we are, wherever we find ourselves, and keep being the change you want in your society. The change starts from where you are. You cannot just start from the global stage. It has to be from the local, then down to the global stage. And sometimes I get many speaking engagements internationally, because before I arrive, before I get there, I get to read, I get to understand the problem, I get to see how I could bring down the narrative for people to understand. You must also identify your audience. Your audience is very important. The way I speak to people when I go to school, especially young people, differs from the way I speak to people in the grassroots. For example, when I go to schools, for let me say primary school, I wouldn't tell them that we have less than 12 years to act on the climate change crisis. I will tell them, like, if you don't act now, your house might be submerged with flood, or you might lose your life or your livelihoods, just to try to create the urgency that we need. But now, if I could tell you that we have less than 12 years, I believe you know what I mean, that we have to start acting from now. And if I could get to the grassroots, I tell them, like, all of this attitude that we are doing, it's affecting our environment. Like, for example, unconsciously, they burn down their bush, like, the crop residues, or maybe wheat, or the rest. It's being burnt down. But that attitude, it doesn't only affect the environment, it also affects the soil facility. So if you keep burning down those bush, or grasses, or crop residue, after each farming season, definitely it's going to affect your crop productivity. And then you will think it's one village human somewhere that is affecting your crop. You wouldn't know that it's your attitude that is contributing towards productivity in your crop. And so those are the kind of conscious attitude or unconscious attitude that affect not only the environment but also agricultural productivity. And once we tell them that, they are able to change to see how they can improve themselves, because better to bury those residues than to burn them, because it also improves microbes. And also, one of those things that we do is to localize our action that best suits the grassroots, the students, and the different audience that we are trying to communicate the science to, see that they are getting it. They're also trying to understand what we are telling them. So just identify your audience. Know the audience you are speaking to before you could start your advocacy. If it is online, if it is offline, try to communicate the science very well to them so that they don't miss out. The way I'm going to speak to a scientist differs from the way I'm going to speak to an activist, differs from the way I'm going to speak to a student, differs from different ways at which you could communicate to the science. And also one of those things is that recently I attended the Global Media Forum by DW in Germany. And one of those things we get to talk about, because once you are representing your community in different countries, try to portray, try to bring forth what you are doing. Like for me, I give this initiative for women and girls because my activities or my initiative is mostly about women and girls. Why? It's because women are affected the most by the climate change crisis. They get to go distance to trek to get cooking water, firewood, and the rest that they need to see that they stabilize their family. And globally, according to a research, it's been known that women spend 200 million hours in a day trying to sort for drinking water. Just imagine if they could convert those times. It could improve economic gain. It could improve resiliency. It could help to bring women's indigenous knowledge in transforming our society. And so those are one of those things we do, trying to give women to access to resources such as fertilizer, seedlings, and other implements that could help women to improve their indigenous knowledge, to help transform our food system and the rest. And so far, we have been able to empower more than 10,000 both young women and girls to see how they can build resiliency against the climate change crisis in their various communities, be it climate education, be it access to resources, be it access to knowledge, knowledge sharing, advocacy, and the rest. So you can keep being a change agent. And one thing is that the climate justice movements have the face of young people that are always campaigning. So you have to know the areas, identify the areas that you want to be a change maker and being consistent in it. Know your audience and try to communicate it in the best way possible that is going to suit not only the global narrative, but your local community at large. Thank you.